with everybody?
They were asking me
You
about
got any
the
more
other
than
things
that
that
for
Trevor
us?
testified, and
Call our meeting
I was like,
order
I've just
40
completely
a.m.
blocked it out of my memory.
Yeah.
Like I just,
May 22nd, economic growth and development.
you said, do you have any more of these?
First action
Jot
item
down.
is to get approval of last meeting minutes, which is April 26th. A motion by Mr. Bean and second by Mr. Wild. Any discussion on the minutes? Call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes as is from our April 26th meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Next, public comment, privilege of the floor. Would anybody like to make a comment to the committee related to committee business? Seeing none, we'll go into our planning department. Nothing from workforce development this month, so we'll have planning, and then EDC Warren County, our president is here. So with that, our first request for a resolution is to amend the planning GIS budget. So I'll ask Sarah to describe that.
Yep, this is just moving back some money that the city of Glens Falls reimbursed for software that we purchased on their behalf and they reimbursed us for, just moving it back into the correct budget code. When we set the budget up last year, we did it incorrectly. Tammy has helped me straighten it out. We know what to do going forward for next year's budget, but yeah, this is just money reimbursed from the city.
Somebody want to make a motion to bring that to the floor? Mr. Stroh with a second by Mr. Bean. Any discussion on that? About $750. I'll call the question. All those in favor of amending the budget to move $753.61, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Second resolution request is to apply for grant funding through various state programs with the CFA. Ethan?
Yeah, this is the consolidated funding application process is New York State's mechanism for, connecting municipalities with grants. These were announced on May 15th. We have a whole packet of available resources through Department of State, PEC, Department of State Development. Right now we're going through all those resources and connecting those with our, county projects and then municipal projects. I anticipate that we'll have a more detailed conversation about some of these programs and projects at next month's meeting. So that's just authorization to submit applications.
Member want to bring that to the floor? First by Mr. Wild, second by Mr. Bean. Any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor of applying for our planning department, applying for grant funding through different state programs, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. Our third resolution request is to apply for funding through the Community Development Block Grant Program. Ethan?
Similar deadlines, but we're pursuing it through federal funding, and this would be for some septic replacements. We have a very high demand for septic replacements. We're seeing this through the Lake George Basin. This would allow us to access more septic replacement funds for low and moderate income residents, and it wouldn't just be limited to the Lake George Basin. So it's basically use the federal funds to support an ongoing program that has got a lot of buy-in.
Somebody want to, Mr. Wild first?
Yes.
Yep. Any second by Mr. Bean? Discussion on that.
Just one, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Ethan, what's the potential match on this?
For the CDBG, there is no match.
No match?
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
really, it's more of a program than a grant, so it will take some administrative time on our end. Luckily, we do have staff available, and the nice part about these CDBG programs is that they also run a lot of housing rehab programs, and we're looking at partnerships for administering these programs or doing it on our own. So this is just like another opportunity for us to start accessing these federal funds that will allow us to do, like, in addition to these septic and water programs, like home rehab as well, if that's what you choose to take.
Awesome. Thank you.
Is that similar to the Restore grant, the 200,000?
Yeah, it's through a slightly different agency. Yeah.
All right, we have a first and a second, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of applying for funding for CDBG grants or through the program, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Number 4, which is to establish a capital account for awards or funding awarded by the DNC.
So we received $105,000 from New York State DEC's Adirondack Smart Growth Program for a Thriving Hamlets Initiative. It's sort of a follow-up activity to the housing needs assessment, in which we're going to be evaluating Hamlet's ability to, the downtown areas in all of our up-county towns to accommodate, housing or any sort of other types of development that meets community needs. So really, it's going to be technical assistance to various communities. This is simply a technicality, getting the capital account established, and then we can start developing a work plan and going to contract agreements with the DEC.
Somebody make a motion to bring that to the floor. Mr. Wild, second by Mr. Stroud. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor of establishing a capital account for that purpose, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries. Number 5. Without objection, do you want to skip to number 6?
Yeah, yeah, 6 is essentially that's a follow-up to number 3. Because the CDBG is a federal funding source, there's some more there's more public hearing requirements, so we simply like to set a public hearing for June, then we close it in July, and then submit at the end of July for this one.
Somebody like to make a motion to bring that to the floor? Mr. Bean, any seconds? Mr. Stroud, any discussion on that? I'll call the question. All those in favor of setting a public hearing for that purpose, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It carries. All right, we'll move into number 5. We have staff and board members here from Warren Washington County IDA. And the request is to consent to the findings that the IDA had their meeting yesterday regarding tax incentives for the 80K dome on Sherman and Queensbury. Or do you want to lead that conversation? Whoever does, if he'd step up.
Good morning. I'm Chuck Barton. I'm the CEO of the Warren Washington IDA. As background on this incentive application, we've been working on this for about 6 months. Afrin Sports out of the Albany area already operates 4 facilities, is looking to acquire the Adirondack Dome and to do $1 million investment. There's some uniqueness in the application where they're looking for fixed pilots. So that kicks in something called a deviation that requires us, not only our board to do the approval, but also the town of Queensbury. And I'm happy to say the town of Queensbury approved the application back on May 6th, and our board approved it this Monday. There is a technical element here that I'll have Kara talk about of why we're here to have you agree that this is a unique service to the area.
Good morning. My name is Kara Elias. General Municipal Section 862 prohibits an IDA from undertaking retail projects. The way the state has described retail is the provision of any good or service. Because this project consists of people visiting this site for a service to attend tournaments and the like, it is considered a retail. So we have to fall into one of the exceptions that the law provides in order to incentivize a retail project. There's 3 potential exceptions that we're able to fall under. One is a tourist destination, which requires persons from outside our economic region, which is now, as we know, the COVID groups of counties. So people coming outside of that area in a highly distressed area, or if it's providing a good or service that would not otherwise be available to the members of the community if this facility was not there. If the IDA approves a project based on either a highly distressed area or on a unique service, then we are required to get the consent of both counties, both Warren and Washington County, since we're a bi-county IDA. So that's why we are here today. The board on Monday, as Chuck mentioned, approved the project with the understanding that should this facility not be here and not in existence any longer, the projects and services that the dome the dome, as it's known as, currently provides would not be available to residents in the area since there's no other facility as close. I think the closest similar facility is in Malta. So that I'm happy to answer any questions.
Has this come before our counterparts at Washington County yet?
No, we have to follow the same process in Washington County. So their committee meeting is June 13th, and then they meet the same day as you in June, the full board.
And what was the vote for the Queensberry Town Board? Unanimous?
Yes. And there were no objections from the IDA board as well.
Any questions for Kara? Mr. Wild?
Thank you, Chairman. Kara, can you explain how the IDA works? This is, if I'm not mistaken, based on my time with the IDA, that this pilot is only related to the investment that they're making, not on the existing property, correct?
No, so it's a little complicated, this particular project, because we're here because of the retail exception. We went to the town because they requested a deviation from the policy. Typically, our uniform tax exemption policy says that the company continues to pay taxes on the existing assessed value, and then any benefits that the IDA is able to provide is on the improvements that the company makes. In this case, the applicant came to the town, the school, the IDA, and requested a set schedule of payments. So the proposed schedule of payments is an actual flat figure that they will be paying on an annual basis, and it will be divided among the taxing jurisdictions based on the percentage of that taxing jurisdiction's overall tax. So for instance, if we were to do it this year, for point of discussion, the county's tax is 18.4% of the overall. So the county would receive 18.4% of the annual payment that's made in that year. And then in subsequent years, based on what the tax rates are, that might fluctuate, but that's how it would be calculated on an annual basis. It's for a period of 10 years.
So if I may just follow up. So the total exemption over the 10 years, if I'm looking at the appendix, is 234,000 and change.
Yes, without escalation.
That's, well, on the property tax, 234,000, you have sales tax of $40,000 and the works tax exemption of 13,000.
Yeah, so on the pilot only, that's the pilot only.
So if I could go back one more time, we're giving them exemption on sales tax also,
Yes,
but just on the improvements.
just on the improvements.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I'm good.
Any other questions? So the resolution today is to consent to the vote that the IDA had yesterday.
Yes, that's our request.
I'll make that motion.
First by Mr. Wild, second by Mr. Bean. Any discussion? Call the question. All those in favor of approving the consent to the findings of yesterday's meeting by the IDA, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to move into discussion items. So if anybody wanted to leave that didn't want to be here for that, feel free. I'll let you, Ethan and Sarah, take it away.
Great, thank you. Out of respect for the time of our consultants that are online here, I'd like to go to discussion item number 3 first. An update on the outdoor recreation economy strategic plan. This is a project that was kicked off last year with Empire State Development grant funding and occupancy tax as well. And so with us today, we've got Alex and Larissa. They're going to give you a quick 10-minute presentation on this project. Just bear with us. So Alex, welcome. I don't know if we can.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, I'll buzz through where we've been tracking on this project for the past 6 months or so. I believe there is a report that's been made available to everyone as well that goes into a lot more detail on the things we're going to talk about today. So that's available as a reference to everyone. I'm Alex Balenza with SE Group. We're a consultancy that focuses on outdoor recreation. And I have a personal tie to this area. I grew up in Saratoga County. My parents live up in North River currently, so I find myself in Warren County a lot. And we were partnered up with Larissa Reed from Common Ground Consulting on this project. Larissa, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Hello, everyone. I'm a small business owner down in the capital region, but I also have ties to the area. My mom is from Glens Falls, and I work with partnerships and organizations like yours. And I'm so sorry, I'm just coming off another meeting. How embarrassing. I work with stakeholder groups and community engagement on projects like this in the environmental and outdoor recreation space.
Thanks, Larissa. So just to give a quick overview of our purpose for this project, there's essentially 3 tracks. We are trying to better understand what the county's outdoor recreation economy is currently, what makes it up in terms of both recreational experiences, but also business activity and community ties. We'll get into that in a little bit in the presentation. With that understanding of the current state of the county's outdoor rec economy, we want to understand and explore different strategies for leveraging that economy as it relates to broader community and economic development goals. So we are doing this project in parallel with the comprehensive plan process, and we're staying in touch with that process, or the two are informing one another, and really thinking about if there's going to be time, effort, and money invested in outdoor recreation and the outdoor economy, how does that tie back to some of these broader goals around things like residential quality of life, business and workforce, retention and attraction, tax revenues, things of that nature. And through all that, we want to define and better understand what the county's relationship is to this economic sector. What roles does the county currently fill, and what should the county take a more leading role in terms of partnerships, investments, coordination, technical assistance, things of that nature. So for any strategies or objectives that we're identifying, we're also identifying here's what the county can or should do in this space, and here's what maybe needs to be taken on by other partners in the outdoor economy space. So a bit about our process. I'm thinking about this process kind of in 2 big chunks. We've had a research and engagement chunk of this project where we're looking at the different outdoor recreation assets that the county has, talking to a lot of different folks across a lot of different industries and sectors within outdoor recreation, whether it's nonprofits, business owners, tourism partners. We teamed up with the comprehensive planning process to do an online survey that included questions about outdoor recreation. We spent some time touring around the county. So we're hearing and learning from a lot of different angles about what makes up the outdoor economy, what are its needs, what are its opportunities. And now we're transitioning more into the planning aspects of this. So we're taking everything that we've learned, and in coordination with our project advisory committee, which includes business owners, nonprofits, county staff, and other folks involved in the space, we're starting to look at goals, objectives, and strategies for moving this sector forward and thinking about how does outdoor recreation address other community and economic development goals. So that's where we're at in the process. And that's just a very quick summary of about 18 months worth of work. So there's plenty more detail we can go into about those different tasks. I'm just going to kick it over to Larissa a bit to talk about our stakeholder input process and who we talked to and who we've heard from and what some of the key takeaways from that were.
Sure. Thank you so much, Alex. We had a series of Zoom meetings over the wintertime. We introduced the project to about 35 industry folks from across different sectors of the Warren County recreation economy. You can see kind of the first words on that bullet list: local governments, nonprofits, recreation businesses, trail user groups. We had really robust conversations with these folks, and we asked them about barriers, challenges to what they're doing, and the ways that the county could help them succeed more in their line of work and providing these amenities and assets to the community. Separate from these 8 Zoom meetings, we've kept these industry folks involved. We've had some other meetings going on the side, and we have a very engaged project advisory committee with 12 folks that was noted on the prior slide. And in addition to that, Alex mentioned the site visits. We met with other industry experts when we were actually visiting them on site in the fall. And so we actually have probably about 50 people that are kind of in that industry and stakeholder group that we're tracking along with this project and getting their feedback along the way.
Thanks, Larissa. And yeah, it's been a really just valuable and informative process to hear from so many different perspectives throughout what we've been working on. So before I go into our findings, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we mean when we talk about an outdoor economy. We like to think of it in terms of 3 pillars. There's recreation destinations. So those are the places where outdoor recreation takes place. So that can include natural landscapes and features, lakes, ponds, mountains, streams, trails, as well as more developed recreational facilities like ski resorts, campgrounds, places like that. There's businesses. So this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of economic impact from outdoor recreation. So this includes businesses that are directly in the business of providing outdoor recreation. So again, that could also be ski areas, campgrounds, whitewater rafting guides, places that sell retail gear, rent equipment, things like that. But also the businesses that benefit from outdoor recreation activity and travel, overnight accommodations, restaurants, folks who are directly involved in receiving those dollars. Then the third pillar is communities. So communities includes kind of our hamlets and our commercial centers that are the center of community life and economic activity. It also includes the community organizations and nonprofits that are providing a lot of the critical supportive services for outdoor recreation. And more broadly, it just speaks to kind of the role that outdoor recreation plays in quality of life and bringing people together and having a shared resource that they value. And when we talk about outdoor recreation, I think it's important to clarify, we're talking typically about nature-based outdoor recreation. So recreational activities that take place in natural or semi-developed settings. So typically talking about things like skiing, boating, biking, fishing, hunting, hiking, less so on things like golf, soccer, kind of organized team sports, things of that nature. So that's kind of where we're drawing a soft delineation. A bit more about the outdoor economy. So this is an established economic sector. This sector is tracked by the federal government. The Bureau of Economic Analysis puts out economic impact statistics every year at the state level. So in New York State, it's over a $30 billion industry, supporting over 250,000 jobs. And it's a growth sector. So they've been tracking this sector since 2018. And there's been over an 8% increase in employment in the outdoor recreation sector in New York State since that time. It's also an area of active state investment. So the $4 billion Environmental Bond Act that was passed in 2022 set aside $650 million for open space conservation and recreation. So it's something that the state has recognized as a critical economic asset in that way. When we talk about assets in the outdoor economy, it's a little bit different than what we might talk about as far as traditional economic assets. We're talking about largely natural assets and assets that to a significant extent are publicly owned. So we're talking about those natural landscapes and features that are supporting outdoor recreation, mountains, lakes, rivers, forests, a lot of different critical natural resources that provide that basis for outdoor recreation. We also talk about infrastructure in this space. So instead of roads, bridges, culverts, all of those things are very important for facilitating access to the recreational experiences. But once people are actually participating, we're thinking about infrastructure in terms of trails and trailheads, boat launches, campgrounds, some of these more developed facilities that are facilitating those different recreational activities. So that's just a quick overview of how we conceive of an outdoor economy, how it shows up, how it's being tracked, and what some of the different elements and inputs are. Just going to go over some of our key findings from our research and our coordination with stakeholders as it relates to those three pillars of the outdoor economy. So the first one being destinations. So at the outset, one of the things we did was an inventory of recreational assets in the county. So different trails and their permitted uses, campgrounds, lakes, public lands, ski areas, everything that might be considered an outdoor recreation asset. And it's probably not surprising to conclude that Warren County has an extremely impressive array of outdoor recreation assets, probably comparable to any county in the country in terms of the diversity and mix and quality of those recreational assets, and considering that those are supporting year-round experiences as well. So very impressive to see just the amount of water access, the amount of mountain-based recreation, amount of trail-based recreation, and everything that falls in between. We did note through our conversations and our research some areas that are in need of improvement. One would be trail and trailhead quality. So there's a lot of legacy trails in the county that were built before modern trail standards that are seeing increased level of use that are increasingly having issues just with the quality of that trail surface and the sustainability of that infrastructure. Similar with trailheads, there's a lot of variation. Some trailheads are very inviting. They have adequate parking capacity. They provide safe access. They provide information and amenities. Others have very little of that. Others are actually, in some cases are unsafe in some ways in terms of facilitating recreational access to a trail. Accessibility is another challenge. A lot of the trail-based recreation in the county, we would consider it to be more intermediate or advanced in terms of the skill or fitness level that's required to use those trails. And there's more limited opportunities for folks who might be more beginners or for folks who may have a more some sort of mobility limitation for their ability to access different forests, mountains, things like that. Water access, the county is really blessed with a lot of amazing water resources that support paddle sports and motorized boating. It's a little bit inconsistent in terms of the actual access to those water bodies. In some cases, there's boat accesses that are in great shape and are really accessible, others that are in really poor condition. That would make it difficult for anybody who has any sort of mobility limitation or adaptive equipment to get their boat in the water. And there's also spots where there's just really limited public access in general. Long stretches of Lake George don't have public access, and there's some other larger water bodies where there's no public access. And we heard a lot about biking, both road biking and mountain biking. The county is taking an active look at road biking through the Warren County Bikeway Study, but there's other areas where there's just gaps in terms of the ability for people, particularly families, to bike from one destination to another in a way that feels safe. And we heard a lot of interest and saw a lot of momentum around expanding mountain bike opportunities, both for residents and for visitors in the county. Businesses, so as our third pillar. We think about businesses in a couple of different ways. We think about what we call the outdoor recreation economy core. So these are businesses that are directly involved in outdoor recreation one way or another. This would include retail stores that are selling gear, places that are providing service or rentals for outdoor recreation gear, and those that are directly facilitating a recreational experience, campgrounds, outdoor recreation guides, ski areas, summer camps. So we identified 160 private businesses that are directly involved in outdoor recreation in the county, which is a big number for a single county. And that includes a lot of campgrounds, motorized boat rentals, fishing guide and charter services, the whitewater rafting industry up on the Hudson River, and other providers as well. We also looked at the tourism aspect of outdoor recreation businesses. So there's New York State tracks tourism economic impact every year. Those statistics are available and indicate that tourism-based employment is a significant percentage of county employment. And that previous studies around recreational tourism indicate that outdoor recreation is a really large driving force for that tourism impact in Warren County. We heard quite a bit in terms of what some of those needs are in that sector. I've listed a couple on the slide here, but we go into much more detail in our report. But some things that really rose to the top were a lack of a centralized information source on outdoor recreation opportunities in the county, a lack of a consistent brand or identity across the county hampers the ability for tourism partners to promote different recreational experiences for visitors. And we heard a lot about overnight accommodations, which I know is not a new conversation, but about the lack of overnight accommodations in the northern part of the county and concerns about the existing stock of older motels and hotels and inns aging out with limited pathways for needed capital investment to sustain those accommodations. We know that overnight accommodations are really critical for economic impact. Those visitor spending numbers jump way up once people start spending the night versus just coming up for the day. So we want to continue to pay attention to that. The last pillar, communities. So a couple different things on communities. One of the things we did as part of this was look at every community's comprehensive planning documents for those that have them. And in nearly every case, there is something in those comprehensive plan documents that's speaking to the importance of outdoor recreation to quality of life and economy in the county's communities. And a lot of those documents also outline specific capital investments that these communities have identified that they want to move forward on to enhance outdoor recreation and deliver community economic benefit. Another key aspect on the community side is the community-based support that different organizations are providing in the outdoor recreation space. So New York State DEC manages over 200,000 acres of public land in Warren County, but there are a large number of local organizations that are doing things like trail development and trail maintenance, promoting outings and getting people outside. really kind of filling in those gaps for things that the government partners aren't delivering on as much. So those organizations are really critical to sustaining not only the availability of those resources, but also they're part of the economic infrastructure in a way as well. We also heard a lot about the importance of outdoor recreation to resident quality of life. One of the key things we heard in the survey, we asked about the importance of outdoor recreation to folks in their decision or their to their quality of life in the county. And they rated outdoor recreation as a similar level of importance to other what we think of as primary quality of life factors. So cost of living, housing, schools, wages. Outdoor recreation was right in the same mix in terms of how important residents thought it was to their quality of life. So I thought that was really important. And the last thing on the community is just the proximity that a lot of communities have in Warren County to recreational experiences, particularly even just looking at hamlets, just how many trailheads or water access points or fishing opportunities or other recreational experiences are located in really close proximity to these community centers, these economic centers. That's both a strength and something that we identified as an area of opportunity to further leverage that proximity. So those are, in a nutshell, some of our key findings. We go into more detail, like I mentioned, in our reporting. And as I mentioned earlier, we're transitioning now into starting to do goal setting and some of the actual planning to develop this strategic plan. So we've identified a number of goals. I'm listing the overall goals on the screen now, but we have 7 different categories of goals that we'll be identifying more detailed objectives and strategies for in coordination with county staff and our project advisory committee. I did just want to highlight a handful of the overall goals that we identified that speak to the broad impact and need around outdoor recreation economy. So when we're thinking about our overall goals, like I mentioned earlier, we're thinking about communities, we're thinking about the tourism economy, we're thinking about the economic linkages between outdoor recreation and communities. Again, making sure that if people are coming up and visiting, how are we bringing them into communities so that there is that economic impact as opposed to them, coming up for a hike and just going back home. Thinking about the connection between outdoor recreation and quality of life, how that informs and benefits the business community for things like business attraction or retention, workforce attraction and retention, and thinking about the barriers to access in outdoor recreation. How can we encourage folks who are new to outdoor recreation or have mobility limitations or other barriers to provide some of those same experiences that are available to other folks, and how that connects back into all these other goals. So that's everything I wanted to share in terms of our quick update. I'm not sure if we have time for questions or not, or if we're just going to keep rolling. But like I said, there's a lot more detail in that report. And if there's a need for follow-up, I'm sure we can connect through Ethan and Sarah to make that happen.
Any questions for Alex or Larissa or Ethan or Sarah Mr. Wild?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy that we had a chance to see this, and I'm encouraged by it. One of the things that we didn't talk about, maybe it is here on the last slide, the financial aspect. I'm curious if we're going to have some metrics that says how does Warren County compare to some other counties within the state, as well as maybe some other surrounding counties that aren't in the state, how we're doing with respect to those. And then on the second part of that, how do we measure the return on investment? Because I'm assuming that we're going to be making some investment in our recreation economy. So how do we decide which ones we go with first, and how do we decide how to support those, and how do we measure our return? So.
Yeah, those are good questions. So we're going to be getting into the next component of this project, in addition to like the detailed strategies and recommendations. We are looking at benchmarking. We're looking at peer counties. But the return on investment one is, that's an interesting one, because there's a lot of publicly accessible free outdoor rec sites that it's hard to have a direct linkage to, what restaurant they stayed at or where they stayed overnight. But I think you'll find things like the town of Queensbury, Steve Lovering, the Parks and Rec department has been using people counters to track visitation to these purpose-built trails that they've been developing around Gurney Lane and Brush Pond. And you can see this corresponding increase in visitation with the amount of investment they put into their trail development. And it's pretty remarkable. I don't have those numbers on hand, but seeing like the number of visitors jump with each bit of trail development there, it's amazing. And I think, town of Queensbury has made a pretty strong point of investment. I think there's been pretty good returns on investment for quality of life and resident attraction as well. But yeah, we will, I mean, that's one of the things we'll tackle. as we go forward.
I'm sure it's not gonna be easy,
Yeah.
but it would be nice to have some kind of way to measure.
Yes, that will be very important.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? Mr. Bruno, I just want to stay consistent with our policy about not having non-committee supervisors talk during privilege of the floor. All right, should we move on to our next discussion item?
Thanks, Alex. and Melissa.
Thank you.
Okay, our discussion, we have project updates. We do have I'm actually gonna combine this with item number 5. I think we have a June 10 board workshop scheduled.
Yes.
This is for the purpose of to discuss the comprehensive plan as well as the broadband initiatives that are happening with our partners. So I think would certainly like to see everyone that we could there on the 10th of June at 10 o'clock, I believe. A board workshop surrounding the comprehensive plan. This will be important for everyone to sort of understand what the issues and opportunities are. It's based on pretty extensive research, public engagement, stakeholder engagement, review of past plans. And from this point, past this board of supervisors workshop is when the strategy development really come into play. So we want to make sure that we have the existing conditions and these core assumptions right, especially with our supervisors, before moving on to full-on strategy development. I think for item 2 for grant programs, I can provide a more detailed update at our next committee meeting, but we will be updating on specific projects that we want to apply for. We're looking at county projects, things that are direct assets to the county, as well as exploring what our municipal projects are. We're reaching out to individually. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any projects that you have on your mind. We might be able to find a good fit for it. There's quite a bit of funding in the state grant rounds right now. And one of the newer programs from the state that I do want to highlight for the supervisors here is a pro-housing program. Back in 2023, the governor had put forward sort of a bold housing proposal. It was met with some resistance. Now in 2024, we're finding that it is more of an incentive-based program that respects local, land use authority. Very much like the Climate Smart Communities program, where you receive a level of certification and then you get some corresponding incentive for favorability with the evaluation of grant applications. The same thing is happening this year. So this is a certification that requires a community to say, hey, we recognize the importance of providing housing in our community. It's fairly generic. And then do an evaluation of existing land use regulations and building permits over the past 5 years. And our department can help you with that. We're happy to do it. It's a useful exercise anyways. And it will open up the doors to considerably more funding for important community projects. But yeah, please don't hesitate to reach out though, because we have, a lot of staff working on this. We're about to have 2 more staff members starting at the end of this month and the start of June. And so if you have community needs, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Do they need Sarah?
No, we tried. We tried. We have 3 Sarahs now. So yeah, so I we'll be reaching out individually. Ideally, what we'd like to do is probably stop by some of your offices on the local level, just to hear from you and get to know what your needs are. And we'll be doing that over the next month or so. But again, I think we just skip over to number 4 now.
Sure. So letterboxing, we have a new letterboxing trail launching Friday. So this is on the bikeway. We collaborated with Warren County Historical Society. It's focused on in anticipation of the 250th anniversary of the Revolution. It's focused on French and Indian War and Revolutionary War history along the bikeway, of which there's a substantial amount. And I also wanted to thank Parks and Rec, as well as the Historical Society and some volunteers from the Whippoorwill Motel who helped do some cleanup. We now have a really nice, marked, well-maintained trail up to the Colonel Williams Monument. It had fallen into disrepair, so we're excited about that. Don will be helping with public outreach for this, as well as the tourism department, and we're hoping it'll be a fun activity for visitors and local residents too.
Is that it for discussion items?
Yeah, that's it on our end.
What's the start date for the principal planner
The 28th.
of May?
28th of May, so next Tuesday, and then June 3rd, I've got a junior planner starting as well, so. We're excited.
Anything else for the planning department? All right, thank you. Moving to privilege of the floor. Is it too late, Supervisor Bruno, for?
I don't know, but I'll ask the question anyway. Thank you, appreciate it. I was just curious in this presentation, which I thought was pretty good. On either under destinations or businesses, there was no mention, or maybe I missed it, of golf. That's a big part of the economy in this area. I'm just curious why.
You know, I don't think that fit into the definition of outdoor recreation. That were, this sort of the active outdoor recreation. Well, I agree with you. There's a huge, number of visitors coming for it. We haven't really examined the golf courses.
Right, and they are established businesses.
Right.
Either destination.
Yeah. So I think we have some metrics that from the state that's sort of incorporated into the overall picture, but we haven't done individual outreach to golf courses at this point. We didn't to the Dome either, organizations like that.
Yeah, but that's one of.
Yeah.
I'm saying, I can start naming them off, but
Yeah.
be here for another 10 minutes for all the golf courses within 30 to 40 miles of here. But anyway.
No, I think that's a good point, and I'll put that into, I guess, our conversation with consultants to see what we pull out of it. So I would imagine that the economic impact of golf courses is fairly substantial around here. Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Staying in the privilege of the floor section, President EDC Warren County, Jim Siplin's here to provide some comments.
I'll leave these charts with you. We don't plan on going through them all, but it does give an overview of where we stand on a number of business-related activities. Oh, you have one?
Yeah.
John?
My goal is to quickly give you an update on things that are timely enough, and I'm worried that if we don't tell you about you may feel like we didn't get to you in time. You can scan through the charts at your own leisure, but what it'll show is that our economic activity continues to be consistent and modestly growing in all categories, whether we're talking about expansion of existing businesses or inquiries around new business. We do a breakout where we give you some sense of the small, medium, large, where they are and of what part of the life cycle of a business they are. If you have questions about that, feel free to ask me. But I would draw your attention to the chart about Nettle Meadow Farms. This is a really important development that the LDC has been instrumental in being involved in. This is a fundamental business in Lake Luzerne, started in Thurman, one of the great success stories of Warren County. A combination of the EDC together with the LDC, I think, has provided some significant support to Nettle Meadow Farms at a critical time in their life cycle. I'd remind everybody that in Lake Luzerne, this is probably the largest employer in the summer, has more than 40 employees, and is one of the products that carries Warren County to the world. They're award-winning cheesemakers, and they continue to draw acclaim everywhere they go. It was a lot of work by the LDC, and I want to point out how important the LDC was. Sometimes they're an existing LDC loan recipient, and they needed additional support. We oftentimes get lost in the idea of whether or not we're getting new applications versus whether we're supporting existing businesses. This was as if we brought in a new business, because if the LDC had not been there to support them, I'm not convinced that this business would have been able to sustain through their next part of their life cycle. Whenever we keep a business this important alive, that's every bit as important as bringing a new one here. And I really want to thank the members of not only this committee, but of the board who can continue to commit their time to the LDC. It was a lot of work to engage with this business to figure out how best to support them. And I think it was one of the best chapters of the LDC in the last few years. I point out to you that we're participating all the time in trying to represent Warren County. I've got a chart in here about Adirondack Day. We have not always classically participated in Adirondack Day, and I think it's because we sometimes get confused about whether or not we're part of the Capital District or whether we're part of the North Country. And the truth is we are both, and we should celebrate being both. And in this particular case, we were a full member along with all of our partners to the north in hosting all of our not only local legislators, but Assembly and Senate leadership through a day's worth of awareness about issues that are common across the Adirondacks. Some of them are well known, like broadband and housing. Some of them are more obscure or difficult to follow. But to have an entire day focused with all of the leadership of the North Country and the legislature is a real opportunity. In particular, SUNY Adirondack was well represented. Hudson Headwaters was well represented. Obviously, organizations like Order were well represented. And I want to make sure you know that Warren County was as big in terms of their representation as any other entity that was there. We are a primary node in the life sciences arena, which we might call classically the medical devices arena, has been one of our largest employers over the last 30 or 40 years. We've been working very hard to try to make sure that we're engaged not only with the current players, but with tomorrow's players. We've opened a very deep relationship with RPI, and we are sponsors and full partners in almost all of their entrepreneurial work around this field. We participate in forums that are both in Troy as well as bringing them here. And it's starting to produce value. We're starting to see actual startups that are germinating out of this. And our goal obviously is to cite some of them here, but to continue to leverage our presence in this industry as why this would be a place wherever they are in the corridor from Troy or the Capital District all the way to here. Anytime that we can get a business that could go anywhere to locate in our catchment area, even if it is beyond the lines of Warren County, it is a victory that levers one of the fundamental parts of our economy. And the local players are playing a larger role. It has not always been such that they have engaged in these kind of things, but particularly what used to be known as BARD, now is known as BD, has been an active participant, and our level of engagement with them has corresponded with this. If you want to know more detail about this, I'd be happy to share it, but I think it's one of the more encouraging things that's happened this year. There's also a chart in there that talks a little bit about our increase in awareness and communications. We've been focusing very much on trying to improve our communications and bringing additional resources there. You can see some of that to bear. Not in the charts, but things that are important to make sure you're aware of. The CFA process has been launched by Empire State Development. I didn't want to wait another month to tell you that. Obviously, Ethan knows it because he and I have been talking about potential grants that we would collaborate on together with the planning department. But for those of you that represent either municipalities or interests within the county or are aware of stakeholders that would have an interest, we will, as always, bring Empire State Development up to hold an open house where they'll review their programs. But the classic timing on this is that the applications have opened now and they will close in July. So if there's anybody that's interested, and we're working with a number of interested parties now, but anybody who you know of that is interested, connect them to us quickly so that we can begin them in the process of developing their applications. I was at an event with some of you yesterday. Kevin, you were there, and Kevin, actually earlier the week at the Orta Ski Bowl. It's an important thing to understand. We just talked about the outdoor recreation community. The state is investing $25 million in a corner of Warren County to do things that will expand the year-round tourism economy there. It was I think, a fairly understated event. And I think I would actually want us to be a little more aggressive, although it's not my show, it's Orta's show. But we are full participants in that. Orta's representation on our board continues. Their new president, Ashley, is a full member of the EDC board. We continue to collaborate with them on not only this project, but anything else that will expand their ability to grow that part of our economy and that part of our county. This represents, I believe, one of the greatest opportunities for us to create net new surface area that we don't have. When we have visitorship here, which is seasonal in Lake George, we've attacked that to try to create year-round tourism there. The same is true for the what have been primarily viewed as wintertime assets of North Creek. Now, quietly, the rafting and the Rev Rail component has delivered tens of thousands of visitors, but our infrastructure to be able to support them, and you heard about this from the consultants just a minute ago. For instance, the ability for us to host people in that arena is limited by infrastructure. We need to bring voice to what the opportunity is there so that we can help you make good capital decisions, both at a county and at a local level. But it's a really encouraging sign. The Lieutenant Governor was up there to promote their investment in this area. I would say that it was one of the better things that have happened this year, and I wish it would have been better known, but I wanted to share it with you. We held a housing workshop yesterday. It's one of a series that we're doing where we're bringing builders together with other interested parties to educate them about opportunities that are available. And this, all the while that the work that the planning department is doing to try to develop a coherent strategy about how we will attack housing capacity on a county level. Ethan was there yesterday. I saw you there, Nancy. I appreciate all the support for people there. But the idea here is for us, we are not a housing authority. We don't build housing, and we're really only trying to bring the parties together to talk about what is already available. While we're working on the strategy, it's really important to understand there's state funds that are being expended and they're only there until they're gone. And we want to make sure that local builders are fully aware of what they are and how they'll access them. And we had a handful of builders there asking very detailed questions about how they might create projects that are appropriate and scalable to the communities of Warren County and participate in some of the programs that the state has. We're going to continue to hold these forums every few weeks. We will continue to make that widely known, and we certainly would welcome all of your participation. Lastly, I want to tell you that quietly in last month's board meeting at the EDC, we made a meaningful change. We've expanded our board by two board members with the goal of trying to increase the amount of business and private sector membership and leadership in our group. If any of you have thoughts about targets where we could use to fill that, I'd certainly welcome it, but I wanted you to be aware of that. We have statutory members that represent the county, the town of Queensbury, the city of Glens Falls, and SUNY Adirondack. And right now there are 7 other members, but ORDA is traditionally one of those. So we really only have 6 that are in play. And now what we've done is create an opportunity to add 2 more to that. The voice of business and the voice of all parts of our economy and our county should be well represented there. And we want to make sure that you're aware of that change. I know that was quick, but there were several timely things there. If there are any questions, I'm available to you anytime.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a comment. Jim does a great job in terms of communicating all the different moving pieces. If you really got into what's going on with our economy, it blows your mind, right? All the different components of what's happening, from entrepreneurs, from housing, as you mentioned, from workforce. We still have 1,000 people that are open in our workforce that we have open jobs for. It's amazing how many different components of the economy exist around here. And I think Jim does a great job keeping his arms around all of this stuff. But one of the challenges that they have is they're a small staff. And they can only do so much. And the county has increased funding, decreased funding. I think we need to consider and get this committee to understand more about what the EDC does and how they're trying to help us move forward and help them grow their staff so they can do even more. So it's just a thought going forward. And one more about the LDC. I chair, Nate's on EDC. There's a few other board members that are on the LDC. We are working towards trying to find out what we can do with our money. I think we have, what, $1 million or something to that effect. That was originally slated for housing years and years and years ago. Now we've been using it to support businesses like Nano Metals we just talked about. But we're also moving forward and looking at different ideas in terms of how we can expand the economy from an entrepreneurial standpoint, the startup standpoint. So those are things that I'm looking forward to have us happen in the short term, hopefully the short term. But there's some great things happening. There's all sorts of challenges. And I thank Jim for what he's doing. And the IDA for what they're doing, because they're helping us move forward. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, just a statement.
Jim, have you had any success with our county clerk about how to better filter out during corporate creation, LLCs that are just SPEs for
Yeah, so just to put this in context, what Chairman E2 is referring to is the fact that there have been hundreds of businesses that have been formed in the last 18 months in Warren County that we don't have a great deal of visibility to because of the way that businesses registration process is somewhat opaque. So we've engaged with the county clerk to try to figure out if there's a way that we could proactively connect with any new business as it's registered. That work continues. In fact, we're bringing an intern in over the course of the summer that's going to help create a process that we might utilize. We're also working with those that we can identify, and we're using avenues like Glens Falls Living, where they essentially out themselves, people who come to the community and tell their story about, you know, why they came here and what they do, to start to engage them. In fact, the first group of alumni from Glens Falls Living profiles will be held in June. And we're working to find a venue for that now, but we're going to take the more than 150 people who've ever had their profile there. We're going to invite them to a forum to try to better understand not only the businesses that they either represent or formed, but also the support that they need to continue to be able to do it. So all of this is part of the work as Chairman E2 and Supervisor Wild talked about, where we're trying to look at active ways to expand our entrepreneurial support. We're doing that together with SUNY Adirondack that runs Startup ADK. They have a wonderful new resource, Bob Bullock, who's a veteran of the Rockefeller Institute in New York and is tremendously connected. It's a unique opportunity for us to expand both the support and I think the personal presence that we can give to young entrepreneurs here that is really compelling. And figuring out the targeted ways to use LDC funds is a part of that. The county clerk has been very amenable to this. I think what we need to do is develop a process that's easy to execute and would almost be somewhat automatic. And that's what we'll start to do as we have somebody on our staff team with them over the summer.
Any other questions for Jim? Great, thank you. Yep, we're still on privilege of the floor, so.
So first, I'd like to say thank you for the approval for the AFRMS application. When it comes to the IDA, if I could do a little bit of a plug, we're always looking for the next investment opportunity to work with. And if you're aware of anything going on, anything typically over about $500,000, please let me know. This is a team sport. I've been working with planning. I have a contact this afternoon up in Chestertown that Ethan had provided. Jim and I worked together with Native Development on the specialty sales. So this is a team sport, but we're not aware of everything going on in the area. I have a pipeline list. I talked to our board. We have 27 projects that are in the pipeline at certain maturities. Some will pop off the list and happen, some will not. But creating that list and maintaining it is very important. So again, if you're aware of any opportunities, please let me know.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Chuck, when I was on the IDA, I thought about the opportunity of using IDA funds to help with the aging, let's say, the aging hotels and motels within the area, specifically on Lake George, but also in other areas. Has there been any movement along those lines?
Yes, there has been. As you all are probably aware of, we worked with the Fort William Henry Resort for the carriage house and renovation of the hotel. There's also an entity called Gregor Hotels who has bought 4 properties in the Lake George area. And the owner and I are in discussions about some opportunity that he's thinking about to modernize the business and move to the 365 model. So the answer is absolutely yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any questions, further questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Anybody else want to make a comment to the committee? All right, we're looking for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Wild, Mr. Bean.